I hate being asked this question about player development. The question is, how do I get to an NFL player engagement position? If I get asked that, if I got $5 for every time I got asked that, this podcast setup would be so much better. I have a Shure mic and everything, right? I kid, but honestly, I hate hearing it, right? I hate hearing that question. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that's a valid question, first of all. I'm not mad at anybody who asks the question. I don't hate the people that ask the question. I hate the question, right? But it's a valid question. How do I get to NFL player development position? Now, with that question that's asked, there's some realities that people need to ask this. Now, number one, I'll get to the realities, but the big reason why, when I hear that question, I always want to ask myself, do you think that's the only way to impact athletes? You think that's the only level? Now, granted, I'm not mad at anybody that wants to be in the NFL. Heck, if I get the right opportunity, I want to be in the NFL, right? So I can't get mad at anybody, but I always think when you're so zeroed in on that, and I love people who have goals, and I love people who understand where they want to be. But when you're zeroed in on that, and that's the first player development question you ask, I always wonder, do you really truly think that's the only space where you can create impact? Now, I always talk about impact. My name's Ed Jones. I'm the founder of Beyond the Field, where we develop people and elevate programs. So let's get to these realities about that question in the NFL player engagement space. Number one, these spaces are limited. The spaces are limited in NFL. I talked about this right here in this episode up in the cloud. The spaces are limited, and the people who are in the role, they ain't leaving. They ain't leaving. All right. I did a study, and it's in that podcast I shared at the end as well, about people who have been in the role for 5 years or more. And that number is high. People get in those roles and they stay in those roles, right? And I don't blame them. I don't blame the people who ask this question. The NFL has its perks, right? It's the highest level. It's I think the most highest grossing league in the United States. It's the most watched league in the United States. I get it. Everybody wants to be at the highest level, but there are realities, right? Last year, there's 32 teams. Last year, they had 68 people in the role, 68. So you're looking 68 to 72. You're looking at 2.5 people per team, excuse me. Those spaces are limited. The NFL player engagement department had a webinar last year where they talked about this. 500 plus people showed up to the webinar. 500 plus people showed up to the webinar. So the reality is you ain't the only one that wants to be there, right? So the picking is slim and it's there, right? So when I hear that question, I'm just like, do you know? Now I do not want to knock anybody down, and I'm not here to do that, but the spaces are limited. Spaces are limited. Number two, when we talk about the realities, there are different opportunities out there. Now, it is not a grandiose amount of opportunities out there, because I know that some of you all here want to work in college and those opportunities are slim. But there are different opportunities. There are more opportunities out there than there is to get in the NFL. At the college level, every sport, football, baseball, women's basketball, men's basketball, they're opening up track and field. There's a lot of sports opening up. Then there's student athlete development positions where you get to develop the entire athletic department. Maybe it's not a team facing role, but it is an athlete facing role. And so there's different opportunities out here that build your muscle to prepare if you want to go to the NFL. Another stat I had in that NFL player engagement study video that you'll see at the end is over 60% of people in the role in the NFL spent time at college. Over 60% of people in the NFL player engagement role have spent time in college. So there's opportunities out there, and a lot of them that are there didn't think or didn't even want to be in the NFL. It just worked out how it worked out. So there are opportunities. And then the third reality is you don't need a logo. You don't need a role per se to make impact. We'll stick to the logo. You don't need a logo to make impact. The NFL Shield, I get it. Trust me, you all. I know it opens up so many doors. This podcast, if this is the NFL Player Development Podcast, the NFL and Beyond the Field, come on, partnership podcast, it would have so much more draw. If I had an NFL logo right here, more people would tune in. I get it, right? But the logo doesn't help you make impact. The logo just opens up doors. If you can't make impact with a door open, a door closed, it ain't gonna matter if you got the logo or not, right? So you can make the impact. If you're like, hey, when I get to the NFL, I'm gonna make so much impact. Make the impact now. Make the impact now. Because you know what NFL stands for, right? They all talk about not for long, right? Right? And so make that impact. You don't need the logo. You don't need it. I'm not saying it's wrong for you to want it, but you don't need it to make impact. And I think about this when I was at the Player Development Summit right here, which I held. That was created we didn't have the NFL. I didn't have a college logo. I didn't have the NBA. I didn't have the WNBA. I didn't have the MLB, NHL, MLS, NWSL. I didn't have logos. It was just work. It was impact. It was building a community. It was serving people, right? I don't get to impact athletes anymore from an athlete-facing aspect. I impact the professionals that impact athletes. Faith Gurdon reminded me on the stage. She's got 200. Rochelle's got 300. By the time, if they would have counted across the entire room, I get to impact over 3,000 athletes per year through this podcast, through this book, right? The Player Development Guide, which dives into what player development is. Get your copy, shameless plug. But I get to make the impact without a logo. Now I got my own logo. Let's go be on the field, right? But I don't need the NFL. You don't need the NFL logo to make impact. You don't need the NBA logo to make impact. You don't need the WNBA logo to make impact. You can make impact right where you are. And so once again, I'm not hating on you for asking that question. It is a question that I've become to hate because when I feel like sometimes when people ask this question, they only see that as the way. Like, I got to get to the NFL. How can you help me get to the NFL? How can you create impact? It's going to start to be my answer back to that question. How can you create impact where you are? Now, for you all that are like, man, I don't care what you said. Just help me get there, right? I have an NFL player engagement study podcast, which you can see right here, down here. And as I always say, go out and create generational impact. Don't wait. Create that generational impact today. Now, if you do make the NFL, send me a gear package. Love y'all. I just hate the question.